The stars stretched endlessly across the dark canvas of space, their silent glow reflecting on the sleek hulls of the human colony ships orbiting the outer rim of the Solaris sector. Life in the colonies had grown comfortable, almost too comfortable. Humans had spent decades building cities in the skies of distant planets, connecting the stars with trade, exploration, and communication networks that made isolation seem impossible. On the surface, the colonies were thriving. On the edges of the system, the Empire was watching, as always, silent and calculating. Commander Mara Reinhardt stood on the observation deck of the flagship Aurora's Pride, her eyes scanning the glittering field of stars. Around her, other officers moved with quiet efficiency, monitoring trade routes, communications, and navigation paths. It was supposed to be another ordinary day. Supply ships floated toward docking bays, miners reported progress in asteroid fields, and children played in the artificial gravity parks inside the colonies. Mara leaned forward, resting her hands on the cool metal rail. She had heard rumors about the Empire's growing activity near the Hesperon belt, a dense cluster of asteroids several light-years away. But the Empire had always seemed distant, a shadow that whispered warnings but rarely struck directly. Until today. A warning alarm suddenly blared through the Aurora's Pride. Red lights pulsed across the deck, casting long shadows. Mara's heart skipped a beat. "Commander, sensors are picking up multiple high-velocity objects on an intercept course." Lieutenant Dax called out, his voice tense. The usually calm bridge had erupted into controlled chaos. "Show me," Mara said, her voice steady, though her mind raced. The main screen flickered, revealing a swarm of massive black ships moving with terrifying precision toward the colony below. "They're here," Mara whispered. The words barely left her mouth before the first flashes of light appeared in orbit around the colony. Massive energy beams tore through defensive satellites, burning bright against the darkness of space. The human colony's shields flared, fighting to absorb the impact, but they were no match for the Empire's firepower. Mara gritted her teeth. "All stations report." "How many casualties?" "Too many," Dax said, his hands flying over the console. We can't hold them." On the surface of the colony, alarms screamed as people scrambled for safety. Emergency shelters filled with families huddled together, the glow of explosions painting panic across their faces. Entire buildings disintegrated in seconds. Mara felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She had trained for attacks, planned defenses, and drilled responses, but nothing could fully prepare anyone for the overwhelming fury of the Empire. Yet, as she watched the destruction, something unexpected stirred within her, a spark of defiance. She knew humans were feared for their unpredictability, their stubborn courage, and above all, their refusal to bow. The Empire expected terror, compliance, and surrender. They did not expect laughter. Mara activated the ship's communication system. "Empire fleet," she said, her voice calm but carrying over the comm channels that likely reached every ship in the attacking formation. "Thanks for the fireworks. Next time bring marshmallows." The bridge fell silent. Officers stared at her in shock. Even Dax, who had never doubted her judgment, blinked twice. "Commander." "Are you?" "Alive doesn't mean afraid," Mara interrupted, her gaze fixed on the destruction below. "Let's show them who they're really messing with." The Empire's ships faltered slightly. They had never encountered humans who mocked them openly during an assault. In that brief moment, a ripple of uncertainty passed through their fleet. Mara seized it. "All wings, prepare defensive maneuvers. Divert energy to shields and auxiliary weapons. Civilian ships, scatter and form decoy patterns. Let them think they've won a target, then hit hard." Orders were shouted, consoles beeped in rapid succession, and the human fleet began to move. Unlike the Empire's rigid formations, human ships weaved unpredictably, dodging blasts, disappearing behind asteroid fields, and returning fire in sudden, calculated strikes. Mara's voice guided them, every command laced with confidence and daring. Meanwhile, the colony below burned. Fires streaked across domed cities, smoke rising into the thin atmosphere. People fled underground, clutching whatever belongings they could carry. Yet even in terror, there was a strange sense of solidarity. Neighbors helped neighbors. Pilots risked their lives to evacuate civilians, and engineers worked tirelessly to restore power and shields. The human spirit refused to break. In the chaos, a young communications officer named Lyra tapped her console nervously. "Commander." The Empire is intercepting our transmissions. They'll trace our fleet if we continue broadcasting. Mara shook her head. Let them. Let them see who we are. Humans don't hide. Humans respond. And humans laugh at danger. The human fleet launched its first counterattack not with massive firepower but with cunning strategy. Mara had instructed cargo ships to load decoy energy cores, mimicking the signature of the colony's main shield generator. As the Empire's warships homed in, expecting to crush human defenses completely, they were caught in a trap. Explosions rocked the outer rim, sending fragments of alien vessels tumbling into the asteroid belt. Ha! Looks like someone needs more training. Mara quipped, her tone dry but cheerful, as another enemy ship spun out of control. Her officers smiled briefly, the tension easing just enough to give them focus. Even as the attack continued, Mara's mind raced ahead. The Empire's aggression was no random act. It was calculated, deliberate, and likely the first strike of something much larger. She needed information, she needed allies, and most importantly, she needed hope. Lieutenant Dax dispatched scouts. I want to know everything about their fleet composition. Civilian ships track the evacuation routes, and keep those broadcasts going. Mock them, confuse them, make them waste energy and attention. They won't know what hit them. The scouts flew into the void, weaving between debris and enemy patrols. Reports came back in rapid bursts, painting a clearer picture of the Empire's strategy. They were powerful, precise, and ruthless, but they were not invincible. Every overconfident maneuver, every moment of hesitation was an opening that humans could exploit. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. Explosions lit the darkness, fires reflected in the hulls of human ships, and the Empire began to retreat, leaving destruction in their wake. On the colony surface, survivors emerged from shelters, blinking against the smoke-filled skies. They saw the human fleet holding formation, small but unyielding. Mara's defiance had become a rallying cry. Humans, battered but not broken, had endured. Mara looked out at the stars, her face calm despite the chaos. Today we survived, she said quietly. Tomorrow we fight back. For the first time in decades, humans had been directly attacked by the Empire, and for the first time, they had responded not with fear, but with mockery, strategy, and fire. Across the galaxy, the message would spread. Humans were unpredictable, clever, and unafraid. The night sky above the colony glowed with the embers of destruction, but it also reflected the resilience of humanity. Mara knew this was only the beginning. The Empire had struck first, expecting submission. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous, a human spirit that refused to bow, refused to hide, and refused to die quietly. Even as the emergency crews worked tirelessly to contain the fires, repair damage, and care for the injured, Mara prepared her fleet for the next move. She began drafting plans for counterstrikes, for defense, and for outreach to nearby colonies. Every human ship became more than a vessel. It became a symbol, a message, a challenge. The stars waited silently, indifferent to the struggles of mortals, but Mara did not wait. She knew that human ingenuity, courage, and humor could turn the tide even against an empire that thought itself unbeatable. And as she watched a small group of children looking up at the stars from the safety of a shelter, she smiled faintly. They think they've won, she whispered. They have no idea what they've started. And so began the first chapter of a war that would echo across the galaxy, not just in weapons or fleets, but in the laughter, daring, and relentless spirit of humanity. The morning sun of the colony's planet rose through the smog of battle, casting weak orange light over the scarred surface. Fires still burned, and emergency crews moved tirelessly to repair what had been destroyed. Yet in the heart of the chaos, hope flickered. Humans, even in the shadow of devastation, refused to surrender. Commander Mara Reinhardt stood on the deck of the Aurora's Pride, watching the recovery efforts below. Her eyes scanned the colony, noting the repair crews, the medics tending to the injured, and the civilians who had returned to their homes despite the risks. She felt a surge of pride. Humanity always found a way to endure, but survival alone would not be enough. The Empire had shown its strength, and if humans did not respond decisively, the colonies would remain under threat. Commander, Lieutenant Dax reported, his voice still tinged with urgency. We've received messages from neighboring colonies. They've seen the Empire's attack and panic is spreading. Many are preparing to evacuate. Mara shook her head firmly. No evacuations. Humans don't hide when danger comes knocking. We organize, we fight, and we stand together. Prepare the fleets for immediate coordination with nearby colonies. We will show the Empire that this strike will not break us, it will unite us. Dax hesitated, glancing at the blinking red lights of incoming reports. But Commander, they're stronger. Their technology stronger. Mara interrupted, her voice rising with determination. They may have stronger weapons, Lieutenant, but humans have something they can never match. Our creativity, our courage, and our spirit. They think fear controls us. Let's show them it does not. Across the colonies, Mara's message spread like wildfire. Broadcasts carrying both strategy and humor were transmitted from one settlement to the next, bypassing Empire monitoring through encrypted signals and decoy channels. Each broadcast contained clear instructions for defense, evacuation, and resource management, but also something else, a spark of defiance. Messages included playful taunts directed at the Empire. One read, "We appreciate the Empire's taste in fireworks, but next time try aiming away from the nurseries." Another, "Your ships are impressive, but our courage is unlimited. Enjoy our hospitality." We call it counterfire. The effect was electric. Humans across multiple colonies rallied together, sharing strategies and supplies. Engineers who had once worked in isolation now collaborated across star systems. Pilots volunteered to transport critical resources, and civilians offered skills they had never imagined using in battle. Even in terror, humans found laughter, ingenuity, and unity. Mara gathered her fleet in the orbit of the largest colony, issuing orders with precision. Scout ships move into the Hesperan belt, map out the Empire's fleet and identify weak points. Combat units retrofit the cargo vessels for stealth missions. Civilian engineers focus on shield generators and energy cores. Every ship, every person contributes. Every action counts. Her crew moved swiftly, inspired by her confidence. Mechanics worked tirelessly to convert freighters into nimble strike ships. Pilots trained in rapid maneuvers, learning to use asteroid fields and debris as cover. Communications officers transmitted clever decoy signals to confuse the Empire, while medics prepared for the inevitable casualties. Mara's leadership turned fear into action, and action into a tangible strategy. Weeks passed, but the Empire did not retreat completely. Their presence remained threatening, though the humans' rapid organization forced them to adapt. Mara realized that a direct confrontation would be too costly. Instead, she needed a plan that leveraged human ingenuity and the element of surprise. The first opportunity came sooner than expected. An Empire convoy transporting supplies and reinforcements moved along a predictable route near the outer asteroid belt. Mara called a strategy meeting with her senior officers. "This is our chance," she said, pointing to a holographic map of the convoy's path. "We don't have the firepower to destroy them outright, but we can make them look foolish and disrupt their supply line. It's time humans turn Mockery into a weapon." Her plan was audacious. Stealth ships, disguised as harmless cargo vessels, would approach the convoy under the guise of trade. Hidden within their hulls were small but powerful energy bursts, designed to disable the enemy ship's engines temporarily. Once the convoy was immobilized, Mara's fleet would strike swiftly, capturing or destroying key vessels while leaving others intact to spread confusion. As preparations continued, Mara's broadcasts reached Empire surveillance satellites. Her messages were bold, playful, and deliberate. "Hope you packed snacks, Empire. The next fireworks show is on us." Across her fleet, humans grinned as they read the words. The Empire, seeing defiance instead of fear, was thrown off balance. They expected retreat, not audacity. The operation began at dawn. Stealth ships slipped silently through the asteroid belt, shadows against the dim glow of distant suns. Sensors picked up the convoy, and Mara's crew held their breath as they waited for the right moment. Then, at her signal, the energy burst disabled the convoy's engines. Ships spun helplessly in the void, unable to communicate or maneuver. "Now," Mara shouted. The fleet surged forward, attacking with precision. Human ships darted between asteroids, striking vulnerable points with well-calculated bursts of fire. Explosions rocked the convoy, but only where Mara intended, minimizing unnecessary destruction. Her officers were amazed by the coordination. Every ship knew its role. Every move was synchronized with ingenuity rather than brute force. As the Empire's ships struggled to regain control, Mara transmitted another message. Lost your bearings? We offer free directions. Follow the stars. They're easier than our aim. The words carried over the disrupted communications channels, leaving Empire officers both angry and confused. The humans' humor had become an instrument of psychological warfare. By the end of the engagement, the convoy was in disarray. Several ships were captured, critical supplies were seized, and the remaining vessels retreated in confusion. Mara had achieved not just a tactical victory but a symbolic one. Humans, though outgunned, had proven that cunning and morale could tip the scales. Returning to the orbit of the main colony, Mara addressed her fleet. Today we showed the Empire that strength alone does not win wars. Courage, creativity, and unity matter as much as weapons. Remember this. Remember yourselves. We are not just survivors, we are humans, and we are unstoppable when we act together. The colonies responded with cheers, their morale soaring. Civilians who had once feared the Empire now felt a sense of pride and empowerment. Engineers and pilots became local heroes. Even children drew sketches of human ships outmaneuvering the mighty Empire, imagining themselves as part of the fleet. Across the colonies, a new spirit was born, the belief that humans together could withstand any threat. Mara spent the evening in her quarters reviewing reports and planning the next phase. She knew the Empire would strike again, and their retaliation would be harsh. Yet she also understood that humans had discovered a key advantage. The Empire relied on predictability, on fear, on the assumption that their enemies would obey or hide. Humans defied predictability. They faced fear with action and laughter. They would fight with every tool at their disposal, turning mockery into strategy and ingenuity into victory. As night fell across the planet, Mara looked out at the stars. Fires still burned in the distance, but the colonies were alive with energy and determination. The message of defiance had spread further than any fleet could fly. Humans would not bow. Humans would not hide. Humans would respond with mockery and fire. Even as she prepared for the inevitable next battle, Mara allowed herself a small smile. The Empire had struck first, expecting fear. Instead, they had awakened something they could not understand. A spark had become a flame that would soon become a beacon. Across the galaxy, humans were learning, adapting, and uniting. The war had begun, but humanity was ready. In the darkness of space, distant stars shone as silent witnesses to the rise of human resilience. Ships moved steadily, repair crews worked tirelessly, and leaders like Mara guided with courage and creativity. Every action, no matter how small, contributed to a growing force that the Empire had underestimated. And somewhere far across the void, the Empire's commanders felt the first tremors of doubt. Humans had survived the strike. Humans had struck back, and humans were only getting started. The Empire's fleets hovered on the edges of human space, their sleek black hulls reflecting the cold light of distant stars. They were powerful, precise, and relentless, an unstoppable force by their own account. Yet they had never encountered humans like these. Humans who refused to fear, who laughed in the face of annihilation, and who met aggression with clever defiance. Commander Mara Reinhardt studied the holographic maps of the Empire's fleet, her eyes scanning every formation, every movement, every possible weakness. The recent convoy raid had done more than damage supplies. It had shown the Empire that humans were unpredictable, daring, and remarkably resourceful. Mara knew this was just the beginning. Lieutenant Dax, she said, pointing to a cluster of enemy vessels. They're organizing a counterattack, trying to regain control. But we can use their own expectations against them. Humans are clever, and cleverness is stronger than any armor. Dax nodded, excitement creeping into his voice. We could bait them into a trap, use decoy ships and make them overcommit. We can— Exactly, Mara interrupted, her tone sharp but calm. And we do it with style. They expect fear. They do not expect laughter. Every move we make, every attack, every message, it will unsettle them. Mockery is a weapon, Lieutenant, as deadly as lasers when used wisely. The plan was bold. Mara would split her fleet into multiple wings, each moving in unpredictable patterns, some visible and some hidden. Stealth ships would infiltrate Empire communication networks, broadcasting playful but confusing messages directly to enemy ships. Meanwhile, other human ships would conduct surprise attacks, striking targets the Empire believed secure. The goal was not to destroy every enemy vessel, yet. but to undermine their confidence and force mistakes. As preparations continued, Mara stood on the observation deck of the Aurora's Pride, looking out at the swirling lights of the fleet below. The engineers worked tirelessly, reinforcing shields, upgrading weapons, and configuring stealth systems. Pilots ran simulation drills, practicing evasive maneuvers through asteroid fields. Even the youngest officers contributed, learning how to coordinate signals and manage communications during battle. Every person was vital. Every action mattered. "Commander," Lyra, the young communications officer, said nervously, "the Empire is scanning for our transmissions. If they detect our broadcasts, it could backfire. Should we?" Mara shook her head firmly. "No, Lyra, they need to hear us. Let them see that we are not afraid. Let them see that humans are unpredictable. We are not just fighting with weapons. We are fighting with our spirit. They cannot understand it, and that is our advantage." The first move came swiftly. A fleet of decoy cargo ships, loaded with minimal supplies but outfitted with high-powered energy bursts, approached a cluster of Empire warships near the asteroid belt. The Empire's sensors detected the incoming ships and assumed them to be ordinary civilian transports. Confident of an easy victory, the enemy vessels advanced. "Now," Mara whispered. With a flick of her hand, the decoys activated, sending blinding pulses that temporarily disabled the enemy ship's targeting systems. Simultaneously, hidden human strike units emerged from behind asteroid cover, attacking the immobilized vessels with precision fire. Explosions lit the void, and the once confident Empire formation began to falter. Across the battlefield, Mara transmitted a message. "Lost your bearings again? Try following the stars. They're easier than reading our tactics." The Empire's fleet commander scowled. Their own communications officers scrambled to suppress the broadcast, but human signals were fast, adaptive, and cleverly disguised. Mara's messages confused, angered, and demoralized the enemy at the same time. Her strategy was working, not just through firepower but through unpredictability, audacity, and humor. Meanwhile, the human fleet adapted to every enemy response. Ships darted between asteroids, using debris as shields and launching sudden attacks from angles the Empire had never anticipated. Engineers on board converted mining vessels into nimble fighters, using scrap metal and experimental energy cores to create new weapons. Mara's fleet was small, but its creativity and coordination made it feel enormous. In the middle of the battle, Mara received reports from scouts that the Empire was attempting to regroup near the Hesperan belt. "They're reinforcing," Dax said grimly. "They'll strike at full strength soon." Mara's lips curved into a faint smile. "Good, let them. The more they attack, the more they reveal. Every misstep, every overconfidence, we will exploit it. Humans do not fear power, they shape it into opportunity." She ordered a series of surprise attacks on minor supply outposts, deliberately leaving some vessels intact to confuse the Empire. Her fleet became a shadow, a ghost in the void, striking unexpectedly, vanishing before the enemy could respond. Each successful mission bolstered morale across human colonies. Children drew heroes in the skies, engineers shared innovations across fleets, and pilots bragged about daring maneuvers that had confounded the Empire. As the first wave of skirmishes ended, Mara gathered her senior officers for a debrief. "The Empire is strong," she said, "but they cannot adapt quickly. They rely on expectation, routine, and fear. Humans are none of those things. We learn, we improvise, we endure, and we laugh. That is our advantage. Tomorrow we strike deeper, and every attack will be smarter, sharper, and more confident than the last." During the night, Mara stayed in the command center, reviewing communications and planning the next stage. Her team had successfully intercepted and decoded some Empire communications, revealing the broader strategy. The Empire intended to isolate the colonies one by one, using overwhelming firepower to crush each in turn. It was a familiar tactic, but Mara had a plan. She would turn their strategy against them. "Humanity has something they cannot calculate," Mara said quietly to Dax. "Our unpredictability, our spirit, our courage. These are weapons they do not understand. They think power lies only in technology. They are wrong. They will learn soon enough." The next day, the human fleet executed a daring maneuver. Using stealth ships as lures, they drew Empire forces into the asteroid belt where hidden human units awaited. The ambush was precise, devastating, and beautifully executed. Several enemy vessels were captured, their crews disoriented and unable to respond. Mara transmitted another playful broadcast. "Congratulations. You just visited our neighborhood. Hope you enjoyed the scenery. Come again." Across human space, the colonies celebrated. Civilians cheered for the pilots, engineers, and medics who had risked everything. The children drew pictures of human ships dancing among the asteroids, outwitting the Empire at every turn. Even in the darkest hours, the human spirit burned bright, unbroken, unafraid. The Empire, meanwhile, struggled to comprehend the humans' approach. Their commanders were used to enemies who feared, obeyed, or fled. They had never encountered opponents who fought with laughter, who turned mockery into strategy, who adapted faster than any fleet could anticipate. The psychological impact of Mara's tactics began to show. Confusion, hesitation, and frustration rippled through the enemy ranks. Mara used this advantage wisely. She focused on capturing critical information, intercepting supply lines, and weakening the Empire's foothold without unnecessary destruction. Every move had a dual purpose. It strengthened human positions and undermined enemy morale. By the end of the week, the human colonies had strengthened dramatically. Communication networks were secured, supply chains were robust, and small fleets moved with precision and confidence. Mara's leadership had transformed panic into action, fear into determination. Humanity had not only survived the Empire's initial strike, they had begun to fight back with cunning, daring, and spirit. One evening, Mara walked along the observation deck, staring into the darkness of space. Ships moved silently below, each one a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. Fires still burned on distant colonies, but the glow reflected a new kind of light, a light of hope, determination, and unbreakable courage. "Tomorrow," Mara whispered, "we will go further. We will fight smarter. We will make the Empire realize that humans are not to be underestimated. We will respond with fire, and we will laugh while doing it." And somewhere across the void, the Empire sensed it. Their attacks had failed to intimidate, their strategy had been countered, and their arrogance had been challenged. The humans were growing stronger, smarter, and more daring with every passing day. Mara's fleet had become more than a military force. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, courage, and unity. The battle for survival was far from over. The Empire would strike again. But Mara and her fleet were ready. Humans did not just endure, they adapted. They did not just fight, they inspired. And they had discovered a secret weapon that no technology could match. The spirit of a species that refused to bow, refused to fear, and refused to surrender. Humans had turned mockery into a weapon, cunning into a shield, and courage into fire. The galaxy had never seen anything like it, and the Empire would soon learn the hard way that underestimating humans was a mistake they would regret. The human fleet moved silently through the Hesperan belt, the jagged asteroids casting long shadows across the hulls of Mara Reinhardt's ships. The stars glimmered cold and distant, indifferent to the conflict below, but humanity's spirit burned brightly against the darkness. Mara stood on the bridge of the Aurora's Pride, her eyes scanning the fleet, her mind calculating every possible outcome. "The Empire is regrouping faster than we expected," Lieutenant Dax reported. "They've reinforced positions near the outer colonies. If we strike now, it will be dangerous." Mara shook her head, her lips curling into a determined smile. "Danger is part of opportunity, Dax. The Empire thinks in rigid patterns. They expect fear, hesitation, and predictable moves. Humans are none of those things. We fight smart, we fight fast, and we fight boldly. That is our advantage." Her strategy was as daring as it was precise. Mara divided her fleet into 3 groups. One to engage directly and draw attention, another hidden among the asteroid fields to flank the enemy, and a third to disrupt supply lines and communications. Every ship had a role, every pilot a purpose, every engineer a task. Human ingenuity and creativity were not just tools, they were weapons. "Scouts report an Empire supply convoy ahead," Dax said. "If we strike, we can cut their reinforcements." Mara's eyes lit up. "Good, send the stealth units in first. Let them disable the engines quietly, create chaos without being seen. Then we strike with the main fleet. Precision, surprise, and control. Let's remind them why humans are dangerous." Across the colonies, news of Mara's planned maneuvers spread like wildfire. Civilians contributed however they could. Engineers adapted civilian freighters into strike ships. Medics prepared emergency stations. and pilots volunteered for risky missions. The human colonies had become a coordinated force, united not just by survival but by courage, ingenuity, and shared purpose. As the fleet approached the convoy, stealth ships slipped past patrols and interference zones, moving like shadows among the asteroids. Mara's heart pounded, but she remained calm, guiding each maneuver with experience and confidence. At her signal, the stealth ships activated small energy pulses that disabled the convoy's engines. Ships spun helplessly, unable to maneuver while hidden human units prepared to strike. "Now," Mara commanded. The main fleet surged forward, striking at weak points with precision fire. Explosions lit the void, and the Empire's vessels struggled to respond. Mara transmitted a broadcast. "Your directions seem off, Empire. Perhaps you need a human map." The message caused confusion among the enemy ships. Communications scrambled, sensors overloaded, and hesitation spread. Mara's fleet moved like a storm, hitting where the enemy was weakest, striking swiftly, then disappearing behind the jagged shadows of the asteroids. Even the smallest human ships played a critical role. Converted cargo vessels fired strategically placed energy bursts, disabling key systems on enemy ships. Pilots performed daring maneuvers, weaving between debris and attacking from unexpected angles. Engineers in orbit coordinated repairs and energy transfers, ensuring the fleet remained operational despite constant pressure. In the midst of battle, Mara noticed a group of Empire warships attempting to flank the fleet. She acted quickly, sending a small strike team to intercept them. The unit, using clever decoy signals and feigned retreats, lured the warships into an asteroid field. Confused and trapped, the enemy ships collided with debris or were disabled by carefully placed energy charges. Mara transmitted another mocking message. "Need directions? Our asteroid maze comes with complimentary snacks." The human fleet continued to press the advantage, striking at supply depots and minor stations while avoiding unnecessary destruction. Mara understood that efficiency and strategy mattered more than raw firepower. Every victory, every successful maneuver, was a lesson for the Empire. Humans were unpredictable, creative, and relentless. As the battle progressed, Mara received reports from scouts of an Empire command ship approaching the field. The vessel was massive, heavily armed, and meant to restore order. Its arrival could change everything. "Prepare the flank units," Mara ordered. "We will not let them regain control. The command ship is fast but predictable. Let's turn their strength into their weakness." Using the asteroid fields and carefully timed maneuvers, human ships surrounded the command vessel from multiple angles. They struck not with sheer force but with precise, coordinated bursts. Energy beams targeted weak points, disabling shields and propulsion systems. The command ship struggled to maintain control as humans executed maneuvers that seemed impossible given their smaller numbers. Mara transmitted a final broadcast to the command ship. "Welcome to human space. We hope you enjoy your stay. It may be longer than expected." The message, a mix of humor and defiance, had a striking psychological effect. The Empire's crews hesitated, their confidence shaken. Even the most experienced commanders could not predict the humans' next move. By the time the command ship regained partial control, the battle had turned in favor of Mara's fleet. Several enemy vessels were captured, and the remaining ships retreated in disarray. Back on the colonies, celebrations were muted but heartfelt. Engineers and pilots returned with minor injuries, medics treated the wounded, and civilians repaired damaged infrastructure. Mara visited the largest colony personally, offering words of encouragement and reassurance. She reminded everyone that human ingenuity and spirit had won this day, but vigilance and unity would be necessary for the challenges ahead. During a briefing with her senior officers, Mara emphasized the lessons learned. "The Empire relies on fear, predictability, and overwhelming power," she said. "We rely on adaptability, creativity, and spirit. Today we have shown them that humans are a force they cannot control. Tomorrow we must be smarter, bolder, and more united than ever." That evening, Mara walked along the observation deck of the Aurora's Pride, gazing into the vast darkness of space. Stars shimmered coldly, distant and silent, but humanity's light burned brightly in every colony, every fleet, and every heart. The Empire had underestimated them, assuming technology alone would conquer courage, but humans had proved that ingenuity, daring, and spirit could overcome even the most formidable power. Even as she watched, Mara prepared for the next stage. The Empire would strike again and they would come stronger, more determined. But Mara knew the humans were ready. Fleets had learned coordination, colonies had built resilience, and civilians had discovered untapped courage. Together they were more than a collection of ships. They were a symbol of human ingenuity and defiance. The following day, Mara coordinated a series of operations to secure more territory and gather intelligence. Stealth units infiltrated Empire communication networks, gathering plans and maps. Strike teams targeted resource depots, disrupting supply lines without unnecessary destruction. Human ingenuity turned the battlefield into a maze, confusing and frustrating the enemy at every turn. Through it all, Mara maintained her strategy of combining humor with precision. Every broadcast, every message, every maneuver was designed to undermine the Empire's morale while demonstrating human resolve. Across colonies and fleets, civilians and soldiers alike drew courage from her leadership. Even the youngest recruits learned the value of clever thinking, improvisation, and unity in the face of overwhelming odds. As the sun set on the outer colonies, Mara gathered her officers once more. "The Empire has firepower, speed, and numbers," she said. "We have courage, ingenuity, and spirit. They may strike again, but we will adapt, we will fight, and we will endure. Remember this: humans do not surrender. Humans do not flee. Humans respond with fire and with laughter." A wave of determination swept through the room. The officers nodded, understanding fully the power of unity and spirit. Mara smiled faintly, knowing that every battle won, every maneuver executed, and every human life saved strengthened not only their forces but the very idea of humanity itself. The stars watched silently as fleets moved in coordinated patterns, colonies repaired, and humans prepared for the next confrontation. The Empire had thought they could strike fear into the hearts of humans, but instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous. A species that fought not just with weapons, but with courage, wit, and relentless spirit. In the darkness of space, Mara Reinhardt stood as a beacon of that spirit. The battles ahead would be difficult, the enemies formidable, but humanity had discovered its greatest strength. It was not in technology alone. It was in ingenuity, unity, and the refusal to bow to any power. The galaxy would soon learn, as Mara's fleet had shown again and again, that underestimating humans was a mistake no one could afford to make. The galaxy was quiet in the moments before dawn, but humans were anything but still. Colonies across the outer systems buzzed with activity. Ships repaired, crews trained, and civilians worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been damaged by the Empire's previous strikes. Humanity had been tested, and every test had strengthened them. Commander Mara Reinhardt stood on the bridge of the Aurora's Pride, overlooking the fleet assembled in orbit. The ships gleamed against the dark backdrop of space, each one a symbol of human resilience and ingenuity. Mara felt a surge of pride. What began as scattered colonies, vulnerable and fearful, had transformed into a coordinated, disciplined, and daring force capable of taking the fight to the Empire itself. "Commander," Lieutenant Dax said, pointing to the holographic map, "the Empire has sent a massive fleet toward the Orion cluster. This is the largest concentration of human colonies outside the Solaris sector. If they succeed, thousands could be lost." Mara's eyes narrowed. "Then we will not let them succeed. Gather every ship capable of combat. Every pilot, every engineer, every willing volunteer. We strike first this time. Humans do not wait for the enemy to dictate the battle. We create the battlefield. We shape the outcome. And we win with courage, strategy, and wit." Her words carried through the fleet's communications network, reaching every officer, every crew member, and every colony listening. Across the stars, humans responded. Ships launched in synchronized waves, engineers completed final modifications on stealth units, and scouts transmitted critical intelligence gathered over months of preparation. Humanity had learned not only to survive but to fight smarter, faster, and more creatively than any opponent could predict. The first phase of the operation was deception. Mara divided her fleet into decoy units and main attack forces. Decoy ships moved openly along predictable routes, drawing the Empire's attention, while stealth fleets infiltrated supply lines, command stations, and communication hubs. Every move was calculated, but every move also carried a hint of audacity, something the Empire could not anticipate. As the first decoy units approached the Orion cluster, Mara transmitted a broadcast directly to the Empire fleet. "Hello again, Empire. We hope you enjoy your stay. The stars can be tricky, mind the curves." The message spread confusion among the enemy ranks. Officers hesitated, unsure whether the humans were bluffing or signaling a trap. Mara's strategy relied on that very hesitation. While the Empire diverted attention to decoys, the main fleet moved in unseen, guided by stealth navigation and intelligence from reconnaissance teams. The ensuing battle was unlike any humans had faced before. Asteroids, debris fields, and the colonies themselves became part of the strategy. Ships moved unpredictably, striking from angles that seemed impossible. Engineers adapted civilian freighters into nimble strike craft mid-battle. Pilots performed daring maneuvers, weaving between enemy fire and returning devastating counterattacks. "Commander," Dax shouted over the comm. "They've concentrated a strike on our flank." Mara's eyes sparkled with determination. "Good. Lead them into the asteroid field. Our hidden units are ready. Let them learn how humans fight when cornered." As predicted, the Empire's ships pursued the human fleet into the asteroid maze. Hidden human units launched ambushes from the shadows, targeting engines and weapon systems with precision strikes. The Empire's technology, advanced as it was, could not anticipate human cunning, speed, or coordination. Ships spun helplessly in the void, trapped by ingenuity rather than brute force. Mara transmitted another mocking message. "Lost again? We offer free maps of the asteroid belt, directions included." The psychological impact on the Empire was profound. Confusion, frustration, and doubt spread through their ranks. Officers second-guessed orders. Pilots hesitated to follow instructions. Humans, on the other hand, moved with confidence, guided by strategy, experience, and an unbreakable spirit. Every maneuver reinforced their superiority and adaptability, not just firepower. By mid-battle, key Empire supply hubs were disabled. Their reinforcements were delayed. Command structures were disrupted. Mara realized the time had come for the final phase, a coordinated strike on the Empire's command fleet, intended to cripple their ability to respond effectively across human space. "Prepare all main attack units," Mara ordered. "This is the moment that will define the war. We move as one, we strike together, and we show the Empire that humans cannot be conquered." The fleet moved with astonishing precision. Stealth ships infiltrated the enemy perimeter, disabling sensors and creating blind spots. Strike teams targeted engines, weapons, and control centers. Mara's main fleet engaged in direct combat, drawing fire but always moving strategically to avoid unnecessary losses. Explosions illuminated the void as human ingenuity turned the tide of battle. Amid the chaos, Mara's voice echoed across enemy comm channels. "Congratulations, Empire. You found human space. We hope it's been enlightening. We recommend caution on your way out." The Empire's command fleet, now surrounded and unable to effectively coordinate, began to falter. Ships were captured or disabled and morale plummeted. For the first time, humans had not only defended themselves, they had gone on the offensive and dictated the pace of the conflict. Back on the colonies, celebrations erupted. Civilians cheered as transmissions from Mara's fleet announced the victory. Engineers and pilots returned from missions exhausted but triumphant. Children and families watched the stars, inspired by the courage and ingenuity displayed across human space. Humanity had proven that even against a superior technological force, spirit, creativity, and unity could triumph. After the battle, Mara convened a council with senior officers and representatives from liberated colonies. "The Empire will strike again," she said, "but they now know that humans are not easily defeated. Our fleets are stronger, our colonies are united, and our people are prepared. Today we secure our space, but tomorrow we expand our influence. We protect, we inspire, and we ensure that freedom is stronger than fear." Mara's leadership became legendary. Across colonies and fleets, stories of her daring maneuvers, strategic brilliance, and audacious humor inspired both soldiers and civilians. She emphasized that victory was not due to any one person or fleet alone. It was the product of collective effort, courage, and ingenuity. Every human, from pilots to medics to engineers to civilians, had contributed to this triumph. In the weeks following the battle, humans began consolidating their victories. Colonies that had once been isolated began sharing technology, resources, and knowledge. Trade routes were secured, communication networks strengthened, and fleets trained together to respond quickly to future threats. Mara encouraged cooperation with neighboring alien civilizations previously oppressed by the Empire. Humans shared their strategies, their tactics, and their lessons learned. Humans fight not only with weapons, Mara explained to Allied leaders, but with spirit, wit, and courage. Strength alone is never enough. Ingenuity, adaptability, and unity define our power. Remember this always. The Empire, battered and humiliated, withdrew from human-controlled space. They would not forget the audacity, cleverness, and fearlessness of their opponents. Across the galaxy, humans had proven themselves not just as survivors, but as a species capable of shaping the destiny of stars. Mara stood on the observation deck one last time, gazing at the colonies below. Fires from repairs still burned faintly, but the glow reflected a different kind of light, a light of hope, resilience, and human spirit. The children playing in rebuilt parks, the engineers repairing ships, and the pilots preparing for exploration all represented a future that was not only safe but inspired. Today, Mara whispered, humanity has done more than survive. We have shown that courage, creativity, and unity define our strength. The Empire may return, but we will always be ready. And they will always remember that humans respond with fire and laughter. Her final broadcast, sent across the galaxy, was simple but profound. We survived. We fought, we won, and we will continue to rise together as humans, defenders of our home and our spirit. The stars belong to those who dare, and we dare every day. As Mara watched the light of the colonies reflect in the blackness of space, she allowed herself a quiet smile. Humanity had endured, humans had adapted, and humans had triumphed. From the ashes of the Empire's first strike, a new era had begun, one defined not by fear, not by oppression, but by ingenuity, courage, and an unyielding spirit that would shape the galaxy for generations to come. Across human space, fleets and colonies celebrated, but they remained vigilant. Mara knew the galaxy was vast, threats were many, and challenges would arise. Yet one truth had been proven: humans were more than survivors. Humans were thinkers, strategists, and creators. Humans were capable of extraordinary courage, and so, with the Empire in retreat, humanity looked outward, not in fear, but with boldness, imagination, and unshakable determination. The stars had become a canvas for human spirit, ingenuity, and fire. Mara Reinhardt's fleet, the colonies, and the people themselves had set a precedent for the galaxy. Never underestimate humans. Never underestimate courage. Never underestimate the power of unity and ingenuity. The galaxy waited silently, but humanity was no longer a timid neighbor. Humanity had learned, adapted, and triumphed. The Empire had story.